here we go. And welcome everyone to the spoiler room. Thank you for venturing down the stairs, pulling up a chair, and popping your favorite drink with us. As you got coffee, I can see that. That's not a bad That's not a bad drink at all. I've got
It
my
is if you want to sleep.
Well, who sleeps overrated? I've got my hard root beer. You have a beverage with you, Kara?
I have seltzer water.
Oh well, I was drinking that earlier. I got seltzer water too. But yes, folks, it is another edition of the Spoiler Room, a new month. And Ian, you can blame him for me doing these theme months because he's like, yeah, Mark, you should keep doing it, and that's all I need per do. And then I'm very subject to suggestions. So I've been doing theme months now for a year and a half, and this month is no different. It's vampires because our horror of 1988 film will be Fright Night 2 this month. So I decided to build a theme around that called Slaying It. So this is Slaying It month in April, and we are going to look at films that involve vampire slayers. And yay, we've got you probably agree reviews in his house. Mr. Mike Crowley is stopping by. Hello, Mike. So glad you could join us. And yes, I've got a wonderful crew in-house here to talk Blade from 1998, starring Mr. Wesley Snipes, an early Marvel film, no less, as well. And by the way, it's just coincidence that this is being done at the same time that another Marvel vampire film came out last week. But we don't talk about that. No. Anyway, just kidding. I just wanted to work at a Kanto reference. What can I say? Yes, you heard their wonderful voices. First, we have back in the spoiler room from horror retrospective. I'll learn how to talk one day, I promise. It is none other than Kara. She returns to the spoiler room. How you doing, Kara?
Doing okay. Glad to be back.
Glad to have you here, especially talking about some Daywalker action going on. Can't wait to hear your opinions on some things. And Ian, yes, how you doing today, sir? My right-hand man and guy who just keeps coming back for more.
Well, I'm doing great, and I do also want to give a shout out to Mike from YPA Reviews. Sorry, when you were announcing him, I realized I hadn't turned my comments on my slow-ass computer. I was like, oh, where's Mike? And then it was, breezed right past it. So
he gave us a hail, and then a Facebook user, because they came in through Facebook, the Marvel shill has arrived. That's none other than Mr. Will from the Cinephile Hissy Fit. Check out both their podcasts, folks. Yes, hashtag license to shill. You'll probably agree reviews and the Cinephile Hissy Fit, both fantastic podcasts and reviewers. So glad to have them in the room tonight to talk Blade. And Kara, if you wouldn't mind, would you be able to give the synopsis of a Blade?
I'll give it
you
a
can
shot.
pass. you can pass to Ian. That's fine if you don't.
Well, I mean, other than just the basics, like all of the strengths, none of the weaknesses, and he's a vengeful, semi-half-human vampire person thing who wants to avenge his mom that was ripped away from him, and he apparently falls in love with a doctor along the way, and he's reunited with his mom.
Yeah, and there's
pretty generic description.
And then there's Stephen Dorff, who wants to raise a blood god, or become a blood god, because as you do in a comic book film with your villain, right? Now, this is from what I call the early days of comic book films, the 90s, where they were still trying to feel their way. Some interesting ones, to be sure. And this was probably... would this be the first major Marvel product in the 10 years that was released to theaters? Not talking about Corman's Fantastic Four, which never actually made it out, but...
in the 90s, you mean?
Yeah, I mean, well, there was Howard the Duck, but
I was going to say that was
there was the first MCU film. I will say it, official MCU film, Howard the Duck. Thank you very much. Anyway,
yeah, I think Blade was kind of it.
Yeah,
Like as far as like, here we
like
go.
Marvel, like the big Marvel type film. It was Blade.
And it's still that awkward period because Marvel had sold a lot of their character rights to various studios in the 90s because nothing was going on with them. Like, well, you want to give us some money for the Punisher? Here, you can take it. But then, ironically, Blade comes out, makes a whole bunch of money. 2 years later, you've got the X-Men, and all of a sudden, comic book movies become a thing. And then they're like, hey, we want these properties back. And so they spend the next decade plus. And so finally, within the last 2 years with the Fox acquisition, it's like, well, hey, now we can have the X-Men, team up with the Avengers to fight the Fantastic Four for whatever reason. I don't know. But yeah, this is kind of where it all began. And I had read somewhere that there was a deleted scene. I have the Blu-ray. I don't know if it's on there, if I have to like look on YouTube, but there was some kind of a deleted scene from Blade where they mention or reference Morbius, the living vampire, which would have done the whole thing that kind of they did with the with Iron Man at the very end, tease the wider Marvel universe. They didn't quite do that here. I don't think. I didn't pick up on any particular Easter eggs, but no, it's this is the second time I've ever watched Blade from start to finish. The first was in the theater back in '98.
Wow.
It's a lot better than I remember it being. New like late 90s CGI accepted.
Yeah. Well, yeah. It's still early, but they were trying. I thought still they did it well with the CGI.
They did as best they could, but there's no way you can watch what has come after it and go back and watch this and not be like, you have to make an exception in your brain, is what I'm saying.
Yes.
You're not like, wow, that's amazing. You're like, well, they tried.
Yeah, they did try. Cara, Blade, did you see it when it first came out?
I did. I saw it in theater also. I liked it, but I've always enjoyed the vampire genre. I'm not too up on comic books. I was just there because it was a vampire movie.
Sure. And so, as a vampire movie, would you say how would you? Oh, you still with us?
Yes.
Okay. As a vampire movie, how would you rate it, or how did you like it? Do you think it's a solid vampire film?
I enjoyed it at the time. I had gone back and rewatched it. I think it still holds up all right. I'm biased on the fashion. I know it's pretty dated, but I was growing up at the time, so it doesn't bother me. As far as the CG, I don't think it was that bad. Like the effects, I mean, obviously it's not what we have now, but I think it was good at the time, or it's good for what it was. I don't think it holds the movie back.
No, it doesn't. And they don't. What I liked is outside of the and folks, this film's many years old, so we're going to probably jump around. But what I like is the only spot where it kind of shows it is if they stay on the scene too long, but they didn't for the majority of their special effects film shots. They're there and then gone. I mean, they're enough for you to tell what's going on, so you can kind of tell it's CGI. But for most of them, it's fairly quick, so you're not like staying on it for like ever. And some of the disintegration to ash effects I thought were really good. It was only when they were trying to show the skeleton first and then it falling away that I think it shows some age there.
Well, definitely when Steven Dorff blows up at the end. Spoilers.
Well, yeah.
They hold on that. When they introduce the formulation or whatever that in the darts that makes the vampires blow up, that first turns their skin all pink and then bubbly, and then they essentially pop like flesh balloons. Yes. They do make a point of holding on that, and you can tell they were very proud to come up with that effect, which they should have been back in 1998, but it doesn't hold up today. And as far as the bones, I mean, this is one of those movies where I would not mind if they went back and gave it the George Lucas treatment solely like the Star Wars 1997 releases, the VHSs where they hadn't done, or maybe it was 95. Right. They hadn't done the special edition thing where they go in and like change the movie, but they just redid the special effects to make them contemporary. I would love for someone to do that with Blade, because the idea of the vampire heads of the vampire mafia in that ritual temple scene of the skeletons coming out of their flesh and then vampire skeletons coming out of those skeletons
yeah,
is an amazing idea. But the bones on the skeleton have the same problem with the bones in the disintegration, which is they look like plastic because they hadn't come up with the texturing right in 1998.
Yeah, I mean, and like you said, it is 98, and surprisingly, this film looks really good too for a budget of 45 million in 98. I mean, that's what they gave this budget of 45 million, and yeah, we've got some comments here. Yes, the Marvel shill arrived. He says, never besmirch Morbius, the cinematic titan, pop culture god. Spoken like a true shill. And then he says, this is definitely the first big budgeted Marvel film. It's considered the beginning of the modern day genre. I will fight that and say the 89 Batman was, but anyway.
That was DC.
Yeah. Well,
Mark, come on.
Well, no, he said it's considered the beginning of the modern day genre of superhero films. If he means Marvel films, then I can say yes. But if he means just overall superhero films, I'll have to debate. And he also says he is the Facebook user. So, and one more for Mr. Will Johnson. He says, incredible production value. He loves the otherworldly mood in the city, shaky VX, but he didn't mind that. Actually, yeah, Kara, what did you think of the world building with this? You said you're a vampire fan. What did you think of the world building and the lore that they did with this, the mythology?
I mean, like the whole vampire god thing, that was a new concept to me, but I wasn't really impressed with it. Like, especially late 90s, people were still hung up on the whole end of the world type theme. So I think it was very much in line with what was going on then. Like even disaster films made a comeback. So it kind of melded in there in its own weird little way, if that makes any sense.
Well, yeah. I mean, that was the one thing that got me with it, was that they built up to this. He's supposed to be a blood god, and anybody in his shadow was just instantly supposed to become a vampire. But they were all vampires around him, so we never really got to see that in action. And they talk about it being the apocalypse. Yet, obviously, he wasn't probably going to get out of the throne room, which is fine. But it still would have been nice to see like a couple of the familiars instantly get turned to like some feral vampires or something just from him looking at them, because they alluded to that through most of when he talks about it at one point, I think, with it. But I did like the whole idea of the Council of Vampires, the old versus new, which again was a common theme in the 90s with a lot of your films, especially the ones geared towards your younger generation, was the out with the old, in with the new type of thing, but
yeah,
help me out with this. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, sorry. I was going to say, well, even the new Scream kind of mirrors that, and people are very love-hate against it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. That one definitely was not subtle in its criticism of modern fandom. That's for sure. What were you going to say, Ian?
The whole idea of the Vampire Council, led by Udo Kier's Dragonetti.
Yes, I love Udo Kier. I'll watch him in anything.
I do. He's great in this, but I'm glad they don't really focus on his name, because I looked at IMDb. I'm like, Dragonetti, really?
Dragonetti.
But okay, so his big beef against Stephen Dorff's Deacon Frost, which is one of the all-time great villain names, I think.
It's a wonderful name.
Was that Frost was a human who was turned into a vampire.
Right.
So he's not a pure vampire like, I guess, the other elders on the council. What does pure vampire mean? Is this part of the mythos of this old god, like they were a race of like demonic creatures who were just always vampires? Or were they born? How are you born a vampire? I don't know. I didn't quite get that. Because to me, like vampires, I mean, that's their whole deal, is they either turn people or they, eat them to death.
Let your imagination run wild. You don't need it spelled out. You got cool one-liners and lots of stabby going on. No, just kidding.
Well, no, it's not a plot hole. It's just something that I was wondering about. I don't think I missed anything in terms of mythology. No. I don't know if it has to do anything to do with like the comics or whatever, right, or if you guys know anything about it. I
wasn't familiar with the comics at all. Kara?
I just read it as the the vampires kind of came up as their own original race, and then just from the intermingling is where you get like the half-bloods or the new vampires, the ones that are shunned and pushed away. So it's kind of, I think, more a commentary on, I guess, social status.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, because the vampires, all the folks on the council look like they're dressed in business suits. All of them, they talk about how they're, Blade later on as they find the massive vampire library, which is all on digital now. And back then, folks, digital were these big discs yet of data. It wasn't like Hackers where you had glass showing data. That's completely different. Trust me, the IT guy in my brain just but yeah, when he was in there, he was talking about how they're involved in everything from politicians to, business to whatever. They're almost like the Illuminati in some respects. The old vampires, but they're all dressed kind of classy, and that the kids today would call them boomers. Pretty much, they were the boomers, and Deacon Frost and his clan, I guess you could call, of turned vampires. They're portrayed in the more modern kid gothic type of grunge look to them versus the more classy look of the and so yeah, you're right, Cara. I think they're making that statement about class in here as well. And you get the feeling as well that the old vampires didn't just turn anyone. They they pick a candidate or what if they're going to turn a vampire. It'd be someone kind of worthy because they looked at it as a gift. Whereas Deacon Frost is pretty much turning anybody he wants to. So there's another thing about like maybe traditional values and such there as well. I know it's a superhero movie where Wesley Snipes kicking ass, but I'm digging too deep probably. But
well, I mean, that's the thing is it's not a superhero movie, really. It's a vampire movie about a guy who's not quite a vampire, but kind of is. I mean, it sort of has that iconography, I guess you could say, because I mean, certainly later with I feel like we retroactively think of it as a superhero movie because it is the proto Marvel film, and because a couple years later with Bryan Singer and the X-Men, he's got everybody in like leather outfits and stuff. So they look back at Blade and like, oh, it's kind of like a superhero outfit thing where it really wasn't. But it's a hell of an outfit. I love that. And I wasn't kidding when I said I think this is a legitimately great film that I didn't quite appreciate at the time, probably because it was the first time I'd seen something like this, and the language has evolved over the last 25 plus years. But it really gets a lot of stuff right in ways that I feel like a lot of Marvel movies that came after it really didn't. It underscores the fact that you don't need to have jokes and quippy humor and cutesy sunshiny shit everywhere in order to have a legit, badass, cool, mythos-filled adventure movie. And I feel like Marvel should do more like Blade. Arguably, they did that with Morbius, but to completely different results.
You do have the word arguably correct, but I'm going to save that for your podcast, which, yes, folks, it's going to be Wednesday night live on Ian's podcast, where they're going to talk Morbius, and they might even let the DC shill in the back door.
By the way, I see Will Johnson's comment. I don't know if that thing about the new X-Men costumes is correct, because I believe that was after the X-Men came out. That was 2001.
Yeah. Will said that he would argue Superman 78 and 89 were more special events, exceptions to the rule that young and untested genre of superheroes, whereas Blade ushered in the concept that this could be common, sustainable concept from year to year, as continued with X-Men and Spider-Man. No disrespect to Batman 89. Wonderful, wonderful film. Lots of disrespect to Howard the Duck. It's a shame that you would disrespect Howard the Duck, the first MCU official film. I'll fight you on that. And he also said Udo Kerr is awesome. Wasn't that dude in Star Trek 2 on the council too?
Which guy?
I don't remember offhand if he was in. I'm trying to remember 2. Oh, at the end. Yeah, I think he was at the end. Maybe. I don't remember.
Well, I still. Which guy?
Which Star Trek 2, I should say. Which Star Trek 2 are we talking about? And then he said, well, Ian, the Singer X-Men costumes were a nod to Grant Morrison's new epic X-Men. And stop your blasphemy, Ian.
Never.
What I liked about this, Kara, you mentioned about the fashion in that. Having watched these past films, especially from the 90s, like, I watched the original Matrix before the new one came out. And this is actually a year before the Matrix, but we've got a lot of styles that are also reflected in the Matrix. What did you think of Blade's outfit? Because this is a year before we get Neo.
I think it was pretty standard. Like, you've got the long leather trench coat, which I guess is supposed to be stylish and functional, and then you've got his, I guess, tactile vest that he wears over. But I think it's more the practicality that he was going for. I don't think he was really trying to have a very specific look, other than it builds him up to make him look even more intimidating.
Right. Yeah, it did make him intimidating, but I mean, he just looks slick. He just looks slick in it. I mean, you're right, though. It is practical. I mean, it's armor. We see why, because even though he can heal quickly, he doesn't want to get necessarily shot up and riddled with holes still. So he's got armor on, some really cool, and he's got some wicked weapons. I loved his sword. I mean, Kara, what about his weapons? His menagerie of weaponry that he uses.
I was more interested in the sword. Not that I know much about weapons, but I just think swords are cool, especially that little kind of click mechanism on there that you can kind of shut off to keep from losing a limb.
That would explode someone's hand. Yeah, that one was great. I love that. His blade. I love Blade's blade in this quite a bit. Everything about his weapons too. His bladerang, whatever you want to call it, the spin that he throws,
chakram or whatever it was.
Yeah, the chakram or whatever that he throws. Even his stakes are made of pure silver, so they look badass when he's staking people too.
Well, yeah, I love those stakes too, because it's like one piece.
Mm-hmm.
But there's no carving or detail on it. It's just like a pure a blade of silver that goes down to a point. It's beautiful. I want Sideshow Collectibles to make something like that on a nice stand that I could put in my office.
Will said he did stand corrected on the X-Men. Well done.
Well, thank you, Will.
But and he would say, okay, yeah. Judson Scott was in Star Trek 2 and Blade. He just checked. Yeah, he was Khan's right hand man.
Was he that long-haired hippie guy that, turn back, sir, we've already won?
Yeah. Yes, yeah. I think he was. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. I got to go watch Blade again. Look for that dude.
But so, I mean, Blade, Wesley Snipes really has a presence in this. I mean, when he shows up, because we get this opening scene, Tracy Lords is said to be in the film. She is, but don't blink too hard because you will end up missing her. She's in the opening scene.
I've only ever seen a few minutes of her at a time anyway. So
Luckily, I don't think she did a song for the soundtrack of Blade, though.
I don't think she did either. No, thank you, Ian. That's just a mental image that has fried my brain now. No,
but what I'm here for.
You get the opening where you get the bloodbath, and I mean, I like this whole setup. The director of this, is Stephen Norrington, and Stephen Norrington did some films afterwards that. Not many. He did The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen was his last film. But this is
I liked that one.
That was fun. It could have been better, but it was fun. It was enjoyable, but it is understandable why the writing, I think, in the story we all enjoy quite a bit still is because this is David S. Goyer who wrote this. And David S. Goyer, for those, is of Dark Knight fame. Constantine. He did Sandman. He's done Ghost Rider Spirit of Vengeance. He pretty much, yeah. And he got his start doing Demonic Toys and Kickboxer too. So
I
And
like
he
that one.
he did also write Crow City of Angels. So you're not perfect. No one's perfect. But he wrote Dark City as well, which explains the costuming because he wrote Dark City. But I like the story in here and actually the direction of this film too, because we get stuff presented to us, at least in such a way to where it doesn't feel like it's totally saying, here you go, spoon feeding you, but at the same time letting you draw in some of your own conclusions. Like the whole bloodbath thing, you're like, okay, they've been doing this for a while and they're in a slaughterhouse, so maybe that blood isn't all human, it could be cattle as well.
It's the human cattle.
It's the human cattle. Yeah, that's true.
I just loved the whole blood rave concept, especially because everybody was talking about raves, techno music. It was all over the place at the time.
It's a beautifully shot scene, especially when you see the vampires like really come out and they're all covered in blood and you see their like wide eyes open. It reminded me of what Danny Boyle would do a few years later with 28 Days Later. Those kind of ravenous, like fiendish human beings that aren't quite right. I think like Wesley Snipes really did a lot of cool things with this performance, because as much as he is the kind of like stoic leave me alone vampire guy, there's that bit in the chase scene in the hospital where he's just kind of doing his thing and all of a sudden the security guard starts shooting at him and he kind of breaks character and says, motherfucker, are you out of your goddamn mind?
Well, even before that, in the bloodbath, after he's decimated so many vampires, which is just this, what a way to introduce a character. This is one of my like top 10 favorite character introductions is this for Blade. It's like, how do you establish your character as badass? Just stick him in a room, even if they're lesser vampires, full of vampires, and watch him just annihilate them as he goes about. But you're right. Here he is, this stoic daywalker killer. And he walks up, and once he finally gets the one guy who he keeps chasing, who's Steve, Deacon Frost's right-hand guy, Quinn, he nails him to the wall. He breaks character for a bit. He goes, yes. And then he goes back to stoic,
When he also, I think it was in that scene too, when he sends the batarang around that kind of round room and it decapitates everyone. He gets it back and he kind of flashes that smile under the sunglasses. Oh, so good.
So as much as he's stoic, he's got a little humor to him, showing that he does have a little bit of human to him. And I think a lot of the Blade itself is thanks to Wesley Snipes' performance in it. He is in this role, and yeah, I dig him in this role, and I dig Chris Christopherson. Who would think they'd make Chris Christopherson look pretty badass in a movie as well as Whistler? What'd you think of Chris?
Well, it's not even just the badassedness of him with a limp, by the way.
With the limp, yeah.
But there's that scene where he's giving Blade the infusion of the serum that he has to take so that he doesn't have to consume human blood. He doesn't have to kill people. And just he's holding Blade's hand. Blade has a bit in his mouth to keep from biting off his own face, essentially. And just that moment we capture where the doctor is watching this happen and these two guys just holding each other's hand. It's almost like someone helping a friend through drug withdrawal or something, like you'd see in Train Spotting. But it's a moment that no one would think to put in a modern day Marvel movie. It's like a hard, real moment that's based in fantasy, and I think it's just perfect.
Yeah, well, their whole relationship in general, I really enjoy the dynamic between these two. I mean, if I came up to you and go, Chris Christopherson and Wesley Snipes have great chemistry together, you'd be like, huh? But they doing this. Car, what'd you think of Whistler?
I liked him. I wasn't too familiar with Chris Christopherson. I'm still really not too much, but I do like the character of Whistler. Also, just the fact that they even make mention that he found Blade as a child. So there's also this father-son dynamic, which, as Ian described, I think that scene makes even more sense because it's kind of like, I'm here for you. I know it hurts.
Yeah, he's taken care of this kid since he was a kid, and like he said, he could have killed him, but he didn't because he noticed the kid was different, and he ends up raising up the badass Blade. And as emotionless as Blade usually stays, you know, as the film goes along, we see more and more cracks in that shell, especially when later on Deacon Frost did some horrible things to Whistler. And of course, I mean, it's one of those, if you watch enough films, you know what's going to happen. If the hero or anything in these films has any type of deep connection to a character, one of them is going to die.
Well, because I hadn't seen the movie in a quarter century, I had forgotten that the connection with Blade's mom and Deacon Frost. I had forgot that she actually came back, and it's weird because I didn't find out about it through the organic process of watching the movie. I found out from the opening credits because Sanaa Lathan is mentioned. She's called out as one of the characters. I'm like, okay, she was the mom in the flashback. They wouldn't just give her front billing for. Oh shit, that's right.
My left side or left field question is though, but because the mom was already pregnant with Blade or whatever his name would have been in the 70s, she's considerably older than Deacon Frost. So is she a vampire cougar?
Oh, vampire cougar. Ah, interesting.
Well, she's significantly older than Deacon Frost is now. Do we know when Deacon Frost was turned?
No,
he might be 150 years old.
That's true. They do allude that Deacon Frost has been turned for quite some time. So even though she is older at the time she turned, he might be older in years. So it's hard to say if she would be a vampire cougar or not.
Either that or Deacon Frost is just milfing.
I think it's that. I think Deacon Frost is just milfing.
Would that be vilfing?
Vilfing.
No.
Vilfing. We've just created like 3 internet things in one go on this podcast. Will Johnson weighed in. He goes, "Yep, Snipes actually showed up for this film, unlike Trinity, where he was literally never on set."
I don't blame him for that one.
Yeah.
Now, here's the thing. In preparation for this, I bought a 3-pack Blu-ray that has Blade, Blade 2, and Blade 3. I've never seen Blade 3.
Really? Trinity?
I've heard awful things about it.
It's a movie.
Is it?
It's more fun to sit and let it be one of those movies that you just make fun of.
Yeah.
All right.
I do have it on. I do have the unrated version, no less.
Oh, I thought you were going to say a Blade 3.
This Blade 3.
Blade
Trinity.
Okay.
I do have.
And I like their Charlie's Angels pose on that front cover.
Isn't it great? Yeah, I've got the original. We're kicking it old school, folks. I got the Blade DVD here. The new line.
The snap cardboard cover.
The snap cardboard cover. Oh yeah.
I think everybody had that as one of their first DVDs. Was that like one of those Columbia House, like you buy 3?
No. This came out. This was like the second print one that they had, but it comes with the DVD catalog because DVDs were huge. But look at this though. This fold out is pretty freaking cool with some screenshots in there. But this is one
shiny too. That looks like it came out last week.
I try to take care of my media, but what's interesting is this is one of those that was one of those hybrid DVDs. So if you put it in the computer, it would give you access to even more content like the script and some other things as well. This also has isolated commentary from Mark Isham. With there is actually a score in this film as well, which I enjoyed. But yeah, there's a huge commentary. But unfortunately, my machine's not Windows 97, so the software wouldn't run on Windows 10 anymore. I got to find an emulator for that stuff. But back to the movie.
Get to the emulator.
Back to the emulator. Get to the emulator.
We got to take on this hot take from Will.
Oh, hot take from Will is, Any Given Sunday was my first DVD with the cardboard thingy.
No, not that one.
The other one. Yeah, I see it. And he said, hot take, Blade 2 sucks. Blade Trinity is actually kind of good. Wow. Look at Will.
I like
Now-
the second one though.
so yeah, we've got 1 for and 1 against the second one. I enjoyed the second one and the third one. Both of them, though, were still tough to live up to for the first one, because the first one obviously was the first one. As we've mentioned here already tonight, it was first on scene. It made the impression. We're talking, like I said, a year before The Matrix, that, you know, Wesley Snipes making a leather trench coat cool before it was really cool for Neo. Yeah. What?
No, I just had an
Oh,
awful thought, and I don't think I'm going to
what's-
share it on air.
Oh, okay.
But
Well, that's good.
no, my awful thought, I'll just give clues. It relates to The Matrix, the controversy surrounding the release of The Matrix, and the popular fashion stylings of that black trench coat.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
anyway,
we're good.
Blade 2, I remember not liking Blade 2 when I saw it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I rewatched it a few years ago. I'm like, this isn't bad, but I feel like I need to have a tiebreaker. 'Cause I know it's Guillermo del Toro, who I really, love as a filmmaker. Accepting some of his recent work, but yeah,
He's hit or miss. I think some of the stuff he's produced is better than his own work.
Yeah, I can see
great
that.
observation.
Yeah, that's a really good observation. He does produce some stuff better than directs, though. I'll watch any of his stuff. Yeah, I think I liked Blade 2 because of Guillermo. Trinity, I don't remember much of. I might have to revisit it again since I actually own it. But Deacon Frost, we talk about him. He's an interesting villain because he seems. Does he seem like an equivalent to Blade, or does he seem like? Do you believe that this guy's actually a threat to Blade at all? Kara, we'll start with you. Or does he not seem like an equal villain, equivalent for Blade, like a true matchup for him?
I don't think they're really on par. I think Frost is more into like the whole tech stuff, which is probably gives him leverage, but even just attitude wise, I think he also stands out because he's kind of very smug, but kind of smarmy. Blade is just very stoic, so it's just kind of funny watching them both play against each other.
Yeah, especially in that one scene after Deacon Frost put on some SPF 9 million, so he could walk around in the sun, and they confront Blade at the park in a
Your mascara's running.
yeah. In a rather disturbing scene. What about you, Ian, and Deacon Frost? Is he kind of a viable threat for, because usually with your superhero, you want an equivalent villain with your hero.
He's an interesting character. I mean, I couldn't get past the performance because at some points it felt like Stephen Dorff was playing Stephen Dorff, and other times he felt like he was playing great value Christian Slater. But
I can see that.
I could definitely see that. Yeah.
But I just wish that he had they'd stuck with Deacon Frost as the antagonist from start to finish. Because when he completes the ritual, we're supposed to believe that La Magra, the vampire god, takes possession of his body and is then fighting Blade. But, because at one point he says, I'm not Deacon Frost anymore. But we don't spend enough time with this entity to really understand what that means. And I would think, and maybe it's because I'm so used to like Del Toro style movies about ancient gods coming to visit Earth, that I would expect something more like the Cthulhu monster from Hellboy. Like this ancient vampire god is resurrected, and all he can do is take control of scrawny little Stephen Dorff and have a sword fight. Like where are the big powers and everything? Like, was he limited to just being a vampire god? Like, ooh, I can make a lot of vampires. Big whoop.
Well, and his eyes turn red.
Oh, yeah.
The whole buildup was a letdown. It's the equivalent of a microwaved cucumber.
Oh, Kara, I love having you on the show, and that could mean any number of things, actually. But
just give it time to cool off if you're going to do that, Mark.
Well, it wasn't a nosebleed moment.
No. We got some comments here and some other people joining us. Hey, Tracy. Tracy says, hey, y'all. So glad you could join us. And Mr. Will Smith says, Nightmare Alley.
Smith.
Well, Will Johnson. Sorry.
He's going to slap you for that.
He's going to slap me later. Mr. Will Johnson. Well, we were talking about Will Smith before the show. I apologize, Will, profusely. Will Johnson says, Nightmare Alley is the only Del Toro film he loves. And he also says that Stephen Dorff's best film, this or Space Truckers.
God, I haven't seen Space Truckers in so long. I'm going to have to go with this just by default.
Yeah. Have you seen Space Truckers, Cara?
I've never heard of it.
Okay, well, you're probably better off not knowing about Space
If it's as bad as Biodome, I'll pass.
Yeah, pretty much on par. And we have Alan joining us as well. And Alan says one of the creepiest memorable scenes from the movie was the fat vampire who they burned with the light to torture. Can't remember another movie with a fat vampire. Very unique. For that time, for sure. Ian and I think we discussed this kind of last week about what is it about having the archivist of whatever or whoever lives in whatever library or deep being this really oversized, overweight character.
I believe in accuracy in media, so what's the problem?
The archivist was definitely creepy. But what I liked about that whole scene was that it helped set up with the doctor, because the one character we haven't mentioned who was wonderful in this as well was, and I'm probably going to mispronounce her name. Ian, how do you pronounce the name properly? Is it Nbushi, right?
I think it was Nbushi.
Nbushi, right? Nbushi Wright is a doctor who ended up being in a morgue because her boyfriend took her down there for one of the crispy vampires, Quinn, who didn't get killed. And Quinn ends up munching her boyfriend or ex-boyfriend and bites her. And they try to keep her from being a vampire. And watching her kind of developed from this doctor into this kind of badass. She's savage. And the reason I bring it up is because she gets to be savage in one of these with this confrontation with the archivist where they learn about the blood god. Cara, what'd you think of the doctor and especially her in this scene with the big fat vampire?
I think she just likes picking on gluttonous, defenseless vampires.
Cara is like people against abusive vampires. No.
He couldn't even move. It was a not fair fight.
Yeah, that's true. That is true. It wasn't exactly a fair fight.
I don't even know when the last time he saw his belly button was.
That's true.
I wonder how they fed that thing. Because it's a vampire, right? It's got to eat. Did someone just like bring by, blood Slurpees or what?
I don't know, but I remember when I saw that character the first time on screen, because I saw this in the theater as well, and I remember it also being creepy. I'm like, whoa, what the fuck? Because you're right, we had really seen antagonists, such an obese antagonist since like Jabba the Hutt, really. Or
Harkonnen from Dune.
Or Harkonnen. Well, Harkonnen from Dune. He gave me trauma. I was way too young when I watched that film because okay. Thanks for bringing up that trauma. I'm gonna have to call my therapist now. Thank you, Ian.
You're welcome.
Will Johnson says he liked the body, the fat vampire. Finally, something with his body type.
Oh, he also said Stuart Gordon. I take that to mean Stuart Gordon made Space Truckers. Now I'll definitely have to go back and check that out. I don't think I realized that at the time.
Well, have alcohol with you. That's all I got to say.
You don't need alcohol with Stuart Gordon. You just need an imagination and, Reanimator, man. Come on.
And mushrooms. And mushrooms. Yeah, you're not far off there. So the doctor, I enjoyed her character quite a bit, because she's one that you could think easily had gone like scary, like gets scared of everything or whatnot, but she doesn't. She she thinks this through quite a bit, especially after she gets attacked by the Jimmy Olsen wannabe cop. The worst familiar in the world. And you know, I just like what they did with her character. You know, what did you think of the doctor character?
The doctor was, she was really good. I kept wondering why I feel like I heard her name a bunch in the late 90s. I don't think it was all surrounding this movie, but I think she was really good. I wondered what happened to her. That was my big takeaway with this movie.
She was in Dead Presidents, so which was
might have been Weinstein syndrome. He killed a lot of people's careers.
Yeah, and unfortunately, though she's still been working, but yeah, she didn't do a lot of stuff after Blade, unfortunately.
And she wasn't involved in the sequel, was she?
In the sequel? No, she didn't show up for the sequel. She was only in this one.
Okay.
And then she did a couple of shows. She was in Widow's miniseries, but she really, unfortunately, after this one, she wasn't in a whole lot. It might have been some Weinstein syndrome of some kind going on.
Or I mean, she could have just decided she didn't want to
be in movies anymore. Yeah.
I don't know. I think, she was really good. I really liked her character. Again, there's so much in this movie that I wish had been more replicated in Marvel films moving forward. Don't get me wrong, I'm glad with what we got, but watching this again, it was almost like a peek into what could have been an alternate future, like serious comic book based movies.
Yeah, because the humor in it wasn't, here's the joke, ba-dump-dump, or a deliberate line. It was like the humor definitely felt more natural in here. I mean, from most of Blade's one-liners, or even the others, Quinn, the reaction of Quinn talking about how where he had both his hands cut off at one point during the fight because Blade had chopped it off once, and then he lost, I think, it to a train. No, he cut it off. That's right. They cut it off again in the train, and near the end, we've got Deacon Frost, and they've captured Blade because he's part of the prophecy to help bring about La Magra. And they've got the scene where he's holding on to the sword, and he tells Quinn to hold his hands out. And Quinn's like, "What are you talking about, man? I just got both my hands back." And he put it out, and Deacon Frost makes like he's going to cut him off, and then he goes, "No, I'm just kidding, man. I just, it's stuff like that I really enjoyed."
Well, I think part of it might be that, I mean, A, we hadn't had that template yet.
Right, yeah.
But B, exactly, this is an R-rated genre film. Whereas Marvel, understandably, they made PG-13 mass market, movies. Right. So you've got to kind of amp everything up a little bit. Whereas this is, not to say that the Marvel movies aren't for adults, but Blade is clearly a movie for adult audiences as the target.
It is, and at the same time, you're not getting it didn't feel like it was a kidified film that was made mature, if that makes sense. Yeah. Like a kidified comic that they're trying to make edgy. They were just setting out from the beginning to make a mature comic book film.
Right. There's a difference between making a horror action movie for adults that kids are going to sneak into, or their parents are going to drop them off the theater, versus making a 4-quadrant movie where you're trying to hook adults and teenagers because you want both of them to come and buy tickets deliberately.
Right. and Blade just falls in one of those decently made mature comic book films. And Will Johnson also stated that, this and Dead Presidents was pretty much her 2 biggest movies. And he says he will not stand for heresy. Keep Marvel quips out of our fucking mouth. Thanks, Will. I appreciate that.
It was just a G.I. Jane joke. Sorry.
Oh, God. Moving on. Tracy said, right, the humor was less contrived. Thank you. It was in this. It felt natural. I mean, what the characters did for humor felt like it was part of their character. It wasn't felt like it was put in there, oh, we need to put in a light moment here. And it worked. It works. And the action, I thought, was well choreographed. I mean, Wesley Snipes literally looks like he's having fun. He is smiling as he's fighting all of these stunt folks, and it's him doing it. I mean, I don't know how many of doubles they had, but I mean, Cara, did it look like he was doing most of his stunts? I think he did most of them, didn't he?
On that, I'm not too sure, but I mean, everything did look pretty good. It didn't look like there were any amateurs in there.
Yeah.
I mean, especially versus when you look at early 1970s martial arts films where people are just mimicking movements and don't know what they're actually doing.
Yeah, everybody here felt like it was trained. It was a whole trained troupe of stunt folks doing these fights, and it works well. And you can see what's going on, right, Ian? You can actually see the fight scenes, what's going on, yet it still kept kinetic. How did we lose that?
I don't. The only thing I can think of is, again, with the last quarter century plus of movies in between, the advent of CGI meant you could not only do more with like creatures and environments and stuff, but also with action. So
Right.
Back in 1998, I mean, we're still 2 years away from Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, where they've got like this really sophisticated wire fu martial arts stuff. I mean, if you wanted to have people flying through the air and having fights, you still had to kind of work all it out to make it look realistic. You can't just say, okay, we'll have Wesley Snipes. This is the scene where he jumps up off camera, and then we're going to show him, we'll composite him flying through the air and like doing 17 swirls with 16 swords. No,
the only compositing they did, again, this is a year before The Matrix. And I will say they have a Matrix type effect in here to where he tosses the doctor when they're on the run from the cops. He tosses the doctor out the window, and then he jumps out the window, and it's almost Matrix style. I'm like, this came out before The Matrix, yet that looked very Matrixy. Will had a question for us. He goes, Snipes looked gaunt at the Oscars. Was he sick at some point? I'm not sure if it was sick or stress. I know he was having some troubles, but I couldn't answer that actually.
I don't know. It could just be age too. I mean, I know. Yeah. I mean, he's not like old, but I know he has, as you mentioned, Mark, he's had some issues, but yeah,
he has in the past, but I mean, he's still in Blade. He's still coming off of it. He's main action guy. He had that period to where he was the action guy for a while. I mean, Demolition Man, he came out just ripped. and here he still has that. He still has that, the body makeup as well. And but yeah, over years I don't think he's needed beefy roles, so maybe it's just the fact that he's lost that muscle mass, and that's why he maybe looks different at the Oscars. But in here he was beefy, but not like Arnold beefy. This, I think it goes what Carl was saying. The outfit is functional. It's not to show off any type of muscles or anything. His outfit, it also serves as a function quite a bit. So, yeah, I mean, this is a fun action film. It does hold up. Outside of the CGI, I will say watching it again, I forgot how much I loved this movie, in all honesty. Yeah. It's
the one thing I didn't love, and I understand they're actors, but the bit where mom comes back to life and is like getting all up in her son's business while he's in that vampire mold or whatever the hell it was, and she's like almost licking him. I'm like, what are we? I mean, I guess she's like no longer human, but that's still your son.
Cougary, yeah, cougar vampire. There you go. Still, but
dude. I just thought of something. Gender swapped Nightmare on Elm Street remake. Freddy Cougar.
Oh no, I think they made a different type of movie with Freddy Cougar.
Wait, did they?
I don't know.
Does it star Tracy Lords?
They have now because they have now because we mentioned it. Internet rule. But no, I'm glad you brought that up. We'll get to it in a minute. We do have a comment here from Tracy, who stated that like to look for people who are waiting to be hit in fight sequences. Yeah, if I see too much of it, it's too damn choreographed.
But we are not talking about the Oscars anymore.
No,
Firm rule. So.
We aren't talking about.
I have that same argument with wrestling. I noticed that where somebody will try to slow down and they're waiting for their spot and they're like, "Are you going to lift me up? Are you going to toss me? Like, you're kind of slow here."
Yeah. Well, they can't all be Ricky the Dragon Steamboat versus Randy Macho Man Savage at WrestleMania 3. Anyway, sorry.
I was just thinking that, Mark. Thanks for saying it out loud.
And here we don't get too much of that, and they have the guys flying at Blade quick enough to where it's not your normal martial arts, one guy at a time comes at our hero. You feel like there are multiple people coming at him. You know, it's a lot quicker, at least. So you aren't waiting it's my turn to fight him now. They do seem to keep coming at him quite a bit. They space it out, though. And I think it's with the editing and the direction. The direction for a film of this nature, I think the direction of this film is solid. Quite a bit. I mean, it moves along. You know, I didn't even realize how long it was runtime of 2 hours. I'm like, wait, is that true? Because it doesn't feel like it at all. It really doesn't.
It moves at a good pace. It doesn't feel like it slows or anything. It doesn't feel long at all.
No, and the plot keeps moving too. Even when we do get the character bit, you know, the bit of exposition with Whistler where he's talking to the doctor about, you know, their history. Even there, though, I mean, it's still moving. The film really clips along nicely, which I was happy for. And yes, you did bring up the mother scene. I had forgotten a bit about that as well. You know, I was like, oh yeah, that's right. And then I'm like, okay. And then I'm like, wait, if I'm remembering correctly while I'm watching it, I'm like, doesn't she get a little bit like all, you know, reverse Lolita? And then she's like, I'm like, yeah, she does. And then I'm like, this is creepy now. this is more creepy.
It's not Sleepwalkers. You're thinking the wrong movie, lady.
Yeah. Sleepwalkers. That's kind of a fun one too. I enjoyed that one. But yeah, the thing with the mom was, you know, it was surprising as well for the film like this. You think, okay, we're building up to the Deacon Frost, you know, Blade confrontation. Then we throw in a twist. Then M. Night went, oh, so that's how you do it. You know, with the mom. and then you think about it going, oh, they're cheaping out. But you're like, well, no, wait, we never actually see the mom die. I mean, you hear the monitor, but you're like, okay, but if she was bit by a vampire, you forget. Wait, she was bit by a vampire. She wasn't like completely killed by a vampire. But you forget that point, you know, because it's such a big baby.
Well, it's very traumatic, and so you just assume they Disneyed it. Like, if you didn't see them die, they didn't die.
Yeah, exactly. But that's why I said it's almost like a M. Night type of thing too, to where you know, he played on your expectations. Why, you know, Sixth Sense work is all he did was play with your normal cinematic expectation of you cut to the next scene and you put 6 months later, you just automatically assume, oh, okay, you know, not realizing, oh, the option of what, you know, Bruce Willis's character could be till the end. So that's why I like that. But yeah, I like the extra little creep factor at the end. It does have a bit of a lackluster final battle. I enjoyed his battles with the minions more than with the battle with Deacon Frost, in all honesty. Though Wesley Snipes gets one of the best, somewhat awkward, but wonderful final one-liners to finish off the boss. You guys remember it?
I don't remember.
There's some motherfucker always trying to ice skate uphill.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
what it is. Yeah.
I've been saying that off and on for like 20 years. Whenever I see someone do something, like trying to do something, you know, way beyond their abilities, or just that those words reach to me. It's one of my favorite. It's one of my favorite one-liners, because that is an out of left field. What I like, that's not like, Yippee Ki or Happy Trails Hans, or one of those, chill out, do whatever. No, this is like a full sentence one liner that you're just like, no, Blade put some thought into this one liner.
Well, it's also the perfect Wesley Snipes one-liner. I mean,
Yeah.
I thought of like Passenger 57, where he goes, "Always bet on black."
Black.
It's awesome.
Yeah, Wesley Snipes was. It was unfortunate what happened to him in real life, because I really enjoyed almost pretty much anything I saw Snipes in. I really enjoyed. I remember when he hit popularity personally, and I thought he was a wonderful pick for this. It's going to be a hard act to follow with, and it's interesting to see what Marvel does with the new Blade. I mean, what are you guys expecting from it? Ian, we'll go with you first. How do you see them handling it, and can they give us anything like this?
I have not seen much of Mahershala Ali.
Mm-hmm.
I like him as an actor a lot, and I think he's got a good look. I think they found a good enough Wesley Snipes lookalike for Blade, because I feel like they're trying to maintain some kind of continuity in some fashion.
Right.
But I'm willing to be convinced.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't see him having that same like badass cool factor as an action factor as Wesley Snipes. I think they've got the look down, but when I watch him, I just think of him as more of an actor than an action star.
Yeah, I agree as well. Kara, what about you? What can the MCU do anything like they did with this original Blade for the new one?
I honestly hadn't heard anything, so I can't really give a proper opinion on that. Sorry.
Okay. No, that's fine. I was just wondering, because I mean, there's going to be some expectations going into it, with it. I mean, there is this other film that a lot of people really enjoyed quite a bit. I think it's going to be, I'm hoping they maybe do give some references or some hints, but Ali really tries to make it his own. I think, rather than trying to duplicate what Snipes was, if he makes it his own, I think it'll be better than trying to be more like that, Blade. But we'll have to see. I just, as far as the maturity level goes, I don't foresee them granted, they say, oh, we're going to do our films. I'm like, I'll believe it when I see it. Okay. And I will say Morbius should have been R. Okay, that's what I'll say for Morbius. I won't say anything more until Ian's show, but it should have been R, folks. It wanted to be R so bad. It was like, please make us R. Will Johnson mentioned that, Snipes was fun in Expendables 3, which he was, and an absolute joy in the awful Coming to America, and the good Eddie Murphy exploitation film. You mean the Dolomite Is My Name film? Wesley Snipes, I've always, as I mentioned before, enjoyed his performances. No matter what he's in, I've enjoyed. He's a talented actor quite a bit. And Johnson also thinks that Ali is simply incredible in anything he touches. I'm not saying he's not going to do well in the role. It's just going to be, a little bit hard for us who have watched the 90s for sure. The new generation probably will have easy, because they've only probably, if at all, visited the film. It's before 2000. So that cuts out about 2/3 of your young MCU audience probably right there, because many don't watch movies past 2000. But if they do, seeing that Blade, it's going to be a little bit interesting to see how they handle the new one. And yes, we know Blade technically does appear in the Eternals, appear as in his voice, appear as in, who was that talking? I must Google it after the movie. And oh, that was Blade. Sorry, that was me. So we'll go around here. Final thoughts on Blade. Kara, ladies first. Your final thoughts with Blade. Would you recommend it to someone today, especially an MCU fan?
I would say give it a chance. I still think it has a lot of good character development. It's a strong story. Even if you're not into vampires, you might still find something enjoyable about it. Sorry.
No, that's okay. Ian, what about you? Your final thought and recommendation?
Oh yeah, I mean, revisiting it now, I feel like I have to go back and redo my best Marvel movies list, because this is definitely, way up there.
Yeah, same for me too. Again, I haven't watched it in a while because I've always got so many movies to watch, but getting it to revisit again for the show, it made me realize just how much I just thoroughly enjoy this movie. It is fun, seeing what they do a year before some of the other films that improved on what they did in here, but still, there's a formula here that did get kind of lost as the MCU took shape, like you said, Ian. I think this shows that you could do a mature. And what's interesting about the maturity of this film, and this my final bit with it is, it's rated R. It involves vampires. About the only actual nudity you get in this film is the big fat archive.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're thinking exploitation type films, oh, it's rated R, oh, it's got vampires, and usually that equates to there's going to be at least one nude scene or whatnot. There isn't in this film. It keeps its tone and its direction, I think.
So you're saying that you give me permission to knock this back out of my top Marvel movies?
You can do whatever you want with your Marvel movies, Ian. Just do it in private. Anyway,
you can see both my hands. Both my hands.
I can. I don't know where Will Johnson's hands are, but anyway, he appreciate it quite a bit for the kind words. Will, awesome job, guys.
Yes, awesome. Thanks for hanging out.
Awesome to our wonderful live audience who chimed in. We had many people. Tracy, Will, you'll probably agree, reviews, some others as well who just watched. Thank you for tuning in live. Thank you, Ian. Thank you, Kara, so much for being on the show and talking about this film. It's a fun film. I'm glad I got to revisit it. We got a lot of other cool stuff for slaying it. And now it is licensed to shill. So, Kara, what have you got that you'd like to shill?
I don't have too much going on right now. I'm hopefully I'll be ready for Easter. I'm trying to get a horror film review marathon going. I try to do that every year. So
nice. That's appropriate for Easter. No, just kidding. No, that's awesome. Those are tough to put together, but I hope you can get it together because those are always fun to watch. For sure. And there needs to be more Easter themed horror films out there. There's some, but I'd like to see a few more. They're pretty some of them, they're a rough one. And Ian, license to shill, please, sir.
Well, I'm Ian Simmons. I run Kicking the Seat, which you can find at kickseat.com. Also the Kicking the Seat YouTube channel. Tomorrow, Wednesday, the 6th of April. So if you're watching this, you can catch the replay. But if you're watching this now, you can catch us live. Mark, I believe, will be joining me for at least one of the two back-to-back live streams we have going on starting at 8 p.m. Central. We'll be talking about the new episode of Moon Knight on Disney+. And then at 9 p.m. Central, we're going to be talking about everybody's true favorite Marvel vampire movie, Morbius. 9 p.m. Central. Don't miss it.
Where'd you get that stat from, Ian? I'd check your sources. Let's just put
it was the number one film this weekend, Mark.
There was no competition. Of course, it's the number one film this weekend.
A technicality for sure. Yeah.
They released it a week after the Sandra Bullock film, which is actually fun, The Lost City, and before Sonic. So they picked that sweet spot in the middle to release Morbius. So there you go.
It's still gonna dominate. Sonic doesn't have a chance. People saw Morbius. They're gonna tell all their friends to go see it. They're gonna see it many, many times.
Again, where are you getting your sources from, Ian? I would just check those. That's all I'm saying is just you may want to double check your sources.
I'll have stats, bona fide facts by tomorrow night, sir. You come ready to fight.
All right, there we go. Yes, folks, check out Horror Retrospective. Kara's channel is great. Ian's channel is great. And you can check our channel too if you're not already on here. Subscribe to Special Mark Productions if you got nothing else better to do. What you do have, though, if you're a filmmaker and you got a horror film and you're looking for a film festival to submit to, submit to the Sawdust City Fright Fest. Right now, submissions are open until June 1st. A very reasonable submission rate. They will judge it for the festival that will occur in beautiful downtown Oshkosh at the historic Time Community Theater on the second weekend of October. So you've got some time, folks. So if you're a filmmaker out there, do it now. There's not too much. Like I said, it's always a good time. So thank you so much. And now we'll just say good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.
Ta-ta.
Bye-bye.